It's a new year in the Peoria Unified School District, and we're bringing you a brand new show, Peoria Connection, a partnership between the Peoria Unified School District and the City of Peoria. It's your source for all that's going on across our schools. On today's show, we'll introduce you to our new Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Jason Reynolds. We'll also preview a local cafeteria with some new menu items being served to our students. And finally, we'll get a preview of our fall athletic lineup. All that and more after this. Excited for our first guest on Peoria Connection. He is the new Deputy Superintendent for the Peoria Unified School District, only been here with us for about 8 weeks now. I'm so excited to introduce Dr. Jason Reynolds. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
We are so glad to have you, but we've been here just such a short time already, but I know you're getting out and about around our schools. What has it been like so far?
Well, it's absolutely amazing. You know, I've had an opportunity to meet some pretty incredible people here in Peoria Unified School District. They have been warm and welcoming. I've had an opportunity to get out to some schools and some of other facilities, and everyone is so proud of the work that they do in the schools that they have created, and they just want to show them off, and that has been a lot of fun.
Well, I know they want to show you all the great things happening. It's always so interesting to me, too, how different each school is, and you have this fresh perspective coming in and seeing each of them, and I know they're probably showing you all the different things that make their campus unique. What really maybe stands out to you so far about what it is that you've seen here in Peoria?
Well, the way that the teachers love their students is extraordinary. On every single campus that I've been on, you can just feel it when you walk into classrooms, when you walk into cafeterias, when you walk around campus. The way that the administrators embrace their role and supporting and guiding their entire communities to make sure that our students are having the very best experience that they can have. It's extraordinary.
Well, and you know what I've found to be true, that is the case no matter who it is that comes onto one of our campuses. So it's not just because you're the deputy superintendent that they're doing this, but they really have that same level of excellence, and they show that to everyone that comes on. But what exactly does a deputy superintendent do anyway? That's kind of a big title. What is your role, or what does that entail, what you do for our district?
Well, as you said, I've been here just about 8 weeks, so I'm still trying to figure that out.
Sure.
But I think from a kind of a global perspective, it's my responsibility as the deputy to work with our superintendent, our governing board, to work with our administrators, teachers, all the stakeholders, including the students, to make sure that we're providing that outstanding educational experience for every one of our students, whether that's academically in the classroom and making sure that our students are achieving their growth every single year and beyond, or whether we're providing some outstanding experiences outside the classroom and in our extracurricular, co-curricular activities.
And I know you are not new to education, even though you're new to us. Talk a little bit, if you could, about your background and really what has led you to Peoria.
Well, I came to Arizona back in 1993, where I was an English teacher down in Yuma, Arizona at Cibola High School, which is still near and dear to my heart. It was a wonderful way to start my career. That community of Yuma has a very similar feel to the community here, where they take great pride in what they do and how they educate their children. So from Yuma, I moved to the Paradise Valley Unified School District, where I was an English teacher, a dean of students, an assistant principal, worked my way through to be principal at Pinnacle High School, and then director of curriculum instruction and assistant superintendent over secondary schools most recently. And that's what brought me here to Peoria.
Well, I know you've had quite the career, but we're just so thrilled that you have come here to us. I want to ask you as well, as you're kind of going out and about and you're seeing things with this fresh perspective and many points of pride, as you mentioned, but what do you see maybe as opportunities or things that we can expect as we look to what's next for Peoria?
Well, we have a really good problem to solve here in Peoria, and that is the fact that there are so many people from around the country, from around the state, from around the valley who want to live in Peoria. And so we're seeing some pretty significant growth in this area. And so there are a lot of challenges that come with that. And it's, as the deputy superintendent, it's important to work with our community, to work with citizens from both Glendale and Peoria to try to tackle some of those concerns and make sure that we're able to provide wonderful facilities, that we're able to provide an attractive place for our teachers and administrators to want to be, and most importantly, the very best learning opportunities for students.
Well, we look forward to working right alongside you through all that, and I think the future's bright for us. We're just so glad to have you. Now, I can't let you leave today without maybe just letting our community get to know you a little bit more. So I've got kind of a lightning round for you, if we could. So if you'll humor me here for just a second, I'm going to put you on the spot just a little bit with some of these questions, and maybe just kind of first thing that comes to mind. Okay. When I ask you these, and just right off the top of your head, and we'll kind of rapid fire go through really quickly here. Can we maybe just put like 1 minute on the clock and see if we can get through these? How about that?
Let's see it.
Okay, we'll put 1 minute on the clock. And texting or talking?
Texting.
Invisibility or super strength?
Oh, super strength.
Dawn or dusk?
Dawn, definitely.
Sourdough or wheat?
Sourdough.
Cake or pie?
Pie.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Climb a mountain or jump out of a plane?
Climb a mountain every day of the week.
Summer or winter?
In Arizona, winter.
Good choice. Hotel or camping?
Camping.
Movies or books?
Books.
Okay, I think we're just about out of time there, but thank you for letting me kind of get through there. And I know our community certainly likes to learn a little bit more about you. So just the warmest welcome from everyone here in the Peoria Unified School District. We're so glad to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me.
I remember. Good morning.
We had so much fun. You decided to do
Good, I'm glad.
Welcome to Peoria Traditional. We're so happy to have you all with us this morning. Champion, and I'm here from Cheyenne to introduce all of you. So, welcome to our campus.
All right.
feel like fall out just yet. The fall weather will be here soon, and that means one thing: it's football season. We have many athletic events kicking off all around the Peoria Unified School District, and we're really excited to be broadcasting many of them new this year through our partnership with the City of Peoria. You can catch many of those broadcasts on Channel 11, and we'll kick it off September 6th with the rivalry between Liberty and Sunrise Mountain.
You know, we got 40 plus seniors, and you know, when you have that type of experience back, it's always exciting to see that leadership, that growth, that maturity, you know, and what that can do on the football field for us. You know, we're really trying to get in that open 8. You know, that's a new deal in the state of Arizona, and you know, we feel like we got a team that has a shot in competing in that.
Just the opportunity to compete with these young guys. We've got kind of a young team. A lot of juniors are starting. New quarterback this year. We had a Keegan Freed from the last 2 years. So we're just looking, you know, we're excited for both of those aspects of the game and see how they turn out.
Well, we have a great deal coming back on offense. We've got our quarterback coming back. We've got 3 running backs. We've got 4 receivers. We've got 3 of the 5 offensive linemen coming back. So that's a real strength for us. And our defense is improving daily.
You go up in front of the team and, you know, you explain why you want to be captain and why you think you can lead the team. And they picked me out of 10 other guys. There's 7 of us. The camaraderie and the bond you build between the coaches and players and stuff, he's never, ever since I was a little freshman, he's always treated me the exact same. JV, varsity, it's always been the same relationship.
I'm looking forward to the changes that we can hopefully see from last season. We had a rough season last year. We got a lot of new kids that are juniors now that are showing a lot of leadership. A lot of the seniors this year didn't really like how they were led last year and want to do things differently. So I'm excited to see just internally how we handle things differently and bounce back from the rough year that we had.
It's football season. I mean, what's not to be excited about? I think that's the biggest thing. These guys, you know, they're all summer, they're in the weight room during the school year, so, I mean, this is football season, so everything's exciting about football season.
Get the ball! Get the ball!
Also, we'll be excited to bring you many opportunities to watch our volleyball games and more athletic events as they're happening all around the Peoria Unified School District. You can find all that and more on our website, peoriaunified.org/Peoria Connection. Well, if you haven't found yourself in your local school cafeteria in a while, you certainly would be impressed if you stepped in today. Food now is just so different than what you may remember when you were younger. An array of options, and we are bringing some of them to you today. I am joined by Angela from our Food and Nutrition Department. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you for having me.
And you have brought us quite the spread, and I know we're going to talk through some of the items that you brought for us and preview some of the things that are new this year. But before we do that, tell me just a little bit about what it is that we serve our kids and kind of what goes into that. I know we follow some set guidelines that we're required to follow, so can you talk a little bit about that?
So we're part of the school breakfast program and the National School Lunch Program headed by the USDA. So we have certain regulations where we're serving more whole grains, fruits, vegetables. Our foods have to be low in saturated fat, low in sodium, and contain no trans fats. So they're actually really healthy.
Well, that's interesting because I have little ones of my own, and finding foods that they like is so challenging, but I know you managed to pull it off. So how is it that you're able to come up with so many creative options that kids actually like?
You know, we do some food testing with them, so we do some taste testing, and we just offer options. Food exposure is just a big portion of it, so we just try to offer a variety, make sure there's color on their plate, and letting them know that they have 2 to 3 options at least.
Well, that's great. I know you get the feedback from them, and you also monitor. So sometimes sales will show what it is that they really like, and they give you that feedback. What does it cost these days for a student to go through the lunch line and make their choices at the elementary and high school level?
So at lunch for the elementary, it's only $2.50.
Very reasonable.
Yes, extremely reasonable. And at the high schools, it's $2.75.
And from that cost they pay, they get a variety of choices, or is it just a set menu item every day?
So the elementaries typically have about 2 to 3 entree options a day for lunch, and that includes hot and cold. High schools typically average at least 12 different options for lunch a day, hot and cold. Elementaries and high school, at least one vegetarian option is served daily.
Well, that's important. I do want to talk a little bit about that. So I would imagine we're seeing more and more families who are becoming conscious about the different types of foods out there and what's healthy and what's not. Are you seeing more requests from our families for some specialty things like maybe vegetarian and vegan, and do we accommodate that?
Yeah, so on our menus, we already make it pretty easy to read. We either have a green leaf or a green letter V to mark that those are vegetarian, and that means that the only animal products or only animal byproducts would be like milk, egg, cheese, or honey in there. So it makes it really easy for our vegetarian families. At the high school, our salad station is actually a great option for people who are following a vegan lifestyle.
Wow, so really accommodating all of them. I do want to turn to some of the items that we have here that you have brought to kind of highlight. Can you kind of maybe walk me through what we've got here, maybe starting over here, and tell us a little bit about what we're looking at?
So this is a breakfast entree that we have for our high schools and our elementaries. So this is a breakfast pretzel sandwich, and it's made with whole grains, so it has more fiber to offer the kiddos. And it has a slice of cheese, it has some ham and egg on there. And then the kids get the option of juice or milk. They can take both. And then there's fresh fruit, sometimes frozen fruit on the line, but options for them to choose at breakfast.
Well, and speaking of fruit, I know you've had some really interesting fruits on the menu, and maybe even be exposing kids to things they've never had the opportunity to try. I've seen things like kiwi and things that probably kids find a little bit interesting. What's been the feedback on those?
I think kids get really excited. One of our high schools last year was able to bring in blood oranges. And so I think the curious kids might only put one slice on their tray, but that's a win for us.
It is, being exposed to many things. Yeah. Now this one really caught my eye because it's become kind of a popular dish, I think, all around. We've seen many breakfast places starting to serve chicken and waffles. Is that what I'm seeing here?
Yes, that's our chicken and waffles, and the chicken is baked. So not fried. We don't fry any of our foods here. It's breaded in whole grains, and then the waffles are made with whole grains as well. So it's our take, our school version take on some soul food.
But still getting a side of syrup there.
That's right.
Okay, can't leave that out. Okay,
no.
Let's move along down here, and I'm seeing some fresh salads.
Yes, so this is our new salad station this year that's available to the high school students Monday through Thursday. And this is just an example of what they could pick. They have all these toppings to choose from, and they can kind of make it their own. They have salad dressings on the side to choose from, and then it comes with a whole grain and, of course, the fruit and veggie bar, so they can load up with some fruits or extra veggies if they wanted.
And it looks like a variety of protein options for them, so not just one choice.
Exactly. We have edamame, we have beans on there for them, cheese, sunflower seeds, eggs, ham, chicken, turkey. Really have a lot.
Definitely a lot of color. Not what probably many people are used to seeing from their younger days in the cafeteria. Well, it all looks delicious, and so I might be doing a little sampling here. Thank you so much for bringing these in, and I know we look forward to featuring some more items here on our show. So thank you, Angela.
Thank you, Danielle.
Like most school districts across the valley, Peoria Unified receives funding for our people and programs from a maintenance and operations override. The current Maintenance and Operations Override, or M&O, funds healthcare professionals, assistant principals on all campuses, maintains class sizes, and pays for programs such as arts, music, physical education, full-day kindergarten, reading, gifted education, and athletics and extracurricular activities. Our governing board recently called for an election where we'll ask our voters to renew and increase our M&O override. The increase would fund safety initiatives, like more counseling and intervention support service positions and additional staff compensation. In order to vote, you must be a registered voter in the state of Arizona. This election is a mail-in ballot only election, meaning you must drop your ballot in the mail by November 1st, rather than visiting your local polling place. To learn more, visit peoriaunified.org/bonds and overrides. Thanks for joining us for Peoria Connection. Before we go, we'll leave you with images from the start of the 1920 school year.
Kids love this stuff. All the advanced computers are displaying. They were all on just like something else. So, yeah. Yeah, right.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you again for your patience. We do appreciate it. We are going to proceed. I do need a motion to reconvene regular session.
Motion to reconvene the regular session.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Sandoval and a second by Ms. Stone. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. We're going to proceed with opening exercises. Please join me for a moment of silence, and then we will have the pledge led by Miss Sofia Ruiz from Canyon, 8th grader.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And we are going to start off with addressing the agenda. 5.1 Governing Board. Are there any items you would like to move around? None at this moment. We will proceed to number 6, staff recognitions. Miss Airy.
Good evening, President Ceja Martinez, members of the board, and Mrs. Palace Thompson. For just one moment, I would like to take you back to last spring and our incredible Peoria Arts and Cultural Festival. I know many of you have attended that event in the past, and many of those who have joined us here in the room have certainly been a part of that very special day. Well, something pretty incredible that also happens that day and really spills over into the rest of the year. At the Peoria Arts and Cultural Festival, our district purchased student artwork as a part of our district's permanent collection in an effort to give our District Administration Center a refreshed look and also support and encourage the work that our students are doing and really teaching them about what it's like to be an actual artist. This serves as a great reminder to our staff and to our community about the work that our students are doing in our schools every day. The student artwork that was purchased and those winners that we were able to support from our last Arts Festival, we do have many of those pieces that are on display this evening, and Mr. Robert Panzer, our Arts Education Director, and his team have helped to put those out on display for us this evening. Something extra special, we were able to invite those artists to join us. Now, a few of them have graduated and moved on to do some big things post-graduation, but we do have a couple of them that are here with us tonight. It's our pleasure to introduce them to you so that they can certainly show off their piece of art. I know they have some very proud family members that are here with them tonight as well. So students, when I call your name, if you would go over and stand next to your work of art so that our governing board and our community can see which piece is yours. And I know they certainly would like to recognize you and give you a big round of applause. We'll start off with Audrey Helton, and her self-portrait is on display. She is from Country Meadows Elementary School. If we can give her a big round of applause. And I know her very proud teacher has joined her tonight as well. Mr. Michael Gibson is here, so congratulations to you as well. Also joining us tonight is Sophia Ruiz, and you met her as she led the Pledge of Allegiance. Hers is the Cut Paper Rose, and she is from Canyon Elementary School. And I know that her family is here. I know that Audrey's family is here as well. Family members, could you stand for a moment so we can recognize you for what you do to support your student? And I know we have proud principals in attendance, and in fact, I think we have some other proud principals that are here that had student artwork that was selected as well, and I don't know if their students were able to join them, but we also have selections from Ira Murphy Elementary School, Centennial High School, Liberty High School, and Peoria High School on display. So a big congratulations to all of those principals. And so we certainly appreciate, we honor the arts in this district. It is such an integral part of what we think makes up a whole well-rounded child. And so just a big thank you to Mr. Panzer, our Arts Education Department, for putting together the Peoria Arts and Cultural Festival each year, for honoring the arts, and of course for allowing us to bring some of that art here to our community that might not have the opportunity to get out and see the festival. I would be remiss if I didn't put a save the date on your calendar for the 2020 Peoria Arts and Cultural Festival. That is happening on Saturday, March 28th. That event has gone on for more than 17 years, and it's really just a pleasure to partner with the city of Peoria on that incredible event, Make the Arts Come Alive in Old Town Peoria. So without any further ado, to our governing board, I will turn it over to you in case you want to share any congratulations with our students tonight.
Will you young ladies would like to join us at the podium, please? On behalf of the governing board, you want to stand up, or you could.
It's been a long evening.
It's okay. First of all, we just, on behalf of the governing board, we want to thank you for having the courage and the creativity to put your lives and your personal touch on sharing it with the rest of us. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'll go ahead and start. Ms. Underhill?
Yes, I just wanted to say, I know it's a little bit hard getting up in front of all these adults. I still feel that way sometimes. So. But thank you for sharing your artwork. It's beautiful, and it's going to be here forever to help inspire other students as we go forward. So thank you guys, and keep going with it. Thanks.
Ms. Pingrelli?
Oh, I just want to say also thank you very much for coming this evening, and thank you for all the parents. I appreciate all your hard work and inspiring your students or your kids. So thank you.
Mr. Sandoval?
Yeah, no, congratulations. It's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you to the parents, the site administrators, Mr. Panzer, all those involved. It's definitely a program that we take pride in here in Peoria, and it's one that definitely differentiates us from the other districts. So thank you for representing that particular pillar, in our program as well, and congratulations again.
Yeah. Ms. Stone?
Well, congratulations, and thank you for being here tonight, and thank you to all the family and teachers. And I'd like to say that I hope you found a degree of fulfillment in creating, and that if you do, that you will continue along that line, and if you didn't find it particularly inspiring, that you would look for a different area where you can express yourself creatively if that one didn't absolutely suit you to a T. Although, the work is beautiful, but I don't know, how well you enjoyed it. So just remember that if one area is not perfect for you, you can find something else that would be. So I'd ask you to continue with your creativity and find a good outlet there for yourself.
Well, thank you very much for joining us and the families.
Thank you.
President Ceja Martinez, I think I may have missed a few of our other arts educators that are here tonight. And so, in fact, would it be okay if all of our arts educators are here? If you would stand so we could give you a big round of applause for what you're doing to support these students. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to board recognitions. Ms. Stone?
I don't have anything tonight, thank you.
Mr. Sandoval?
Yeah, so quite a few, but I'm going to focus on a couple. I had the opportunity to attend Country Meadows. They had a family math night, which was a great way to definitely showcase the great things that are going on at that site, in addition to, having a platform that allowed the parents, to come in and also experience, what their children are going through there at Country Meadows. So congratulations to that site for that. And another kudo, I don't believe she's here, but Ms. Lopez Lira, I just wanted to, thank her. When we talk about leadership throughout this district, talk about leading with others in mind. I was given a comment from one of our teachers here in the district who just made a comment in and around her leadership and how this individual is inspired, by what she does on a daily basis. So I just want to acknowledge that and say thank you to Ms. Lopez Lira. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pingarelli?
Nothing this evening.
Ms. Underhill?
I just wanted to say quickly that I've had the opportunity to meet with some principals over the last couple of weeks, and I'm just so awed and inspired by what's happening in our schools and the work that they're doing. We have so many talented, dedicated people, many of which who have come up through the ranks of Peoria, and if you haven't had a chance, just go visit some of our schools because they're just amazing. So I just want to thank our principals, all of them, and our administrators for the work that they do, the time that they spend on so many events, and just let them know I'm in awe. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I do want to take a moment. We do have a fellow board member from Westmac, Ms. Wiley, joining us this evening. So thank you so much for joining us. We do partner with CTE programs, and I know you guys are doing great things over there. For me, I will echo some of those things. We went to the Centennial event, academics event, and highlighting academics. I saw some teachers in the audience, some principals, and the things that are going on at Centennial High School was only a glimpse of what's going on in our district. So continue to push our students and encourage our parents to celebrate with our children on all their hard work. So thank you. All right, at this moment, we're going to continue to move on. Number 7, public comment. Oh. Oh, yes, at this point, families, if you like to, we usually pause. If you'd like to step out, go have dinner, celebrate, go home, do homework, enjoy the rain if it's raining. Board meetings are fun to be at, but we recognize ice cream tastes better. Thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations.
Mrs. Sejas Martinez, while they're leaving.
Yes.
Can I
Yes,
join?
thank
on
you.
a couple of recognitions that we have on Saturday, because our people work, every day. Our administrators worked with our student leaders at the annual Leadership Day. Very, very exciting. That's our opportunity for elementary student councils to grow their leadership skills. So that was a pretty neat event. Also on Saturday, Peoria staff attended training for Boys Town. And that's pretty exciting too, because we're getting our social emotional curriculum up in gear. Also, very, very exciting. I have to congratulate Centennial Media Club individuals Stephen Nguyen and Raymond Callis Media Club members Marcy Danowski, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, and Michelle Mena. This team became the first in Peoria School District history to take first place in the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences Production Award. That's first place. That's the same group that puts on the Emmys. So pretty powerful, and I managed to get a copy of a videotape, so looked at that, pretty good. And then thanks to Peoria North Rotary and Arizona Association of University Women, every single one of our schools, our 5th grades, classrooms, and our library was donated this book by them, and it's called One Vote, Two Votes, One I Vote, You Vote. And it's a Dr. Seuss, and it talks about not how to vote, okay, or who to vote for, but definitely how the Founding Fathers found the Constitution. It's all in rhyme. It fits into our social studies curriculum, and we're pretty excited about it. So thank them.
Thank you for highlighting that, because if you follow our social media, all those things were on there, so I was able to keep track, whether via Twitter,
Unreal, yeah.
Peoria Inside. I do follow Facebook, and so you can see a lot of those things that were highlighted, and then they have also been highlighted in our newspaper, Peoria Your Valley, because we've had some students have some wonderful accomplishments in the service. The Air Force is one right now, so kudos. Thank you for bringing that up. Now moving on to 7.1, public comment. I don't believe we have any green slips. Okay, moving on to number 8, consent agenda. Governing Board, are there any items you would like to pull? Ms. Pangarelli?
I would like to pull the travel.
Okay, 8.5. Ms. Underhill? Mr. Sandoval?
Yeah, I'd like to pull 8.9.
8.9, Educational Services Incorp. Employee Staffing Agreement with Peoria Unified School District.
Right.
And Ms. Doan? Okay, thank you. Governing Board, I do need a motion to approve the consent agenda item excluding 8.5 and 8.9.
I move that we approve the consent agenda minus 8.5 and 8.9.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Sandoval, a second by Ms. Underhill. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to items moved from consent, we're going to proceed with 9.1, which will be the travel request. We'll go ahead and start with Ms. Pangarelli.
Yes, I just wanted to highlight this one. Last board meeting, we approved, and I did have questions on it because there were 5 members from one high school, Centennial, going to the ASCD conference. I did get some of those questions answered. This board meeting, now there are 10 more people going from another high school. This is Peoria High School. And if you look at the cost for the conference, and if I'm looking at the cost for, I'm happy with the Peoria High School. They have a majority of teachers going, and I appreciate that. But if you look at the cost of a sub, which is, I think, $95 a day when the teacher's out of the classroom. If you look at meals, just 15 people for one conference is over $33,000. So I'm just questioning. I voted to send the Centennial people last time, and I will vote to send the Peoria this time. But I would like to in the future have at a conference everybody submitted to the board at one time. And then I have a question for Dr. Reynolds. Do you know if 15 people, are we going to have more people come in next board meeting that are to be approved?
As of now, Ms. Pingarelli, we don't have any more travel for that particular conference.
Okay. Yeah, my feeling is that for $33,000, it would be nice to split up and have fewer people at a conference to bring back that information. So if we were going to spend that kind of money, we would be able to go to more conferences and to bring back more information to help the students. And then I did have a comment or a question on the out-of-state travel request form that is that we see as the governing board. At the bottom, it lists that once you have completed your trip, please submit a mandatory trip summary using the selections listed in the area below. Below is just 5 questions. So overall, how satisfied were you with the conference? How would you rate the value of this conference? Did the conference event improve the skills in the area it was designed to improve? How likely is it that you would recommend the conference to a colleague? When we send people on trips, and this one for $33,000, what is the expectation? Is it only to fill out 5 questions? Or do they give a trip summary? Do they talk to the other administrators, other teachers? I want to know what we're getting out of that kind of money. Right, Dr. Reynolds, I don't know if you could answer that.
So being relatively new to the process here in Peoria, I can't speak directly to those 5 questions,
Okay.
what the origination was for those. I did speak with both principals from both schools, and we had specific conversations about what we do when we come back. Both principals were very confident that the trainer-of-trainer model that they are utilizing, where their leadership teams will be able to come back and then use the information, use the learning that they gained at these specific conferences to further the vision, further the work that they're doing on each of those campuses.
Thank you.
I will continue and echo Ms. Pangarelli's comments. The board has brought this up. As a matter of fact, the form that you're looking at, Ms. Pangarelli, has been barely amended back in April of 2018. I would encourage the board as we go into our board goals. This is something when we discuss equity, making sure that all schools are represented, that the money that they're choosing to spend on professional development is outlined and aligned to drive outcomes. So if they're going to this conference, what's the measurable outcome we should see? And are they going to come back and teach others? Again, highlighting the fact that this is something the board, I would highly recommend consider discussing along with board goals.
I had one other comment. I noticed looking at the request for this board meeting versus the last, the price has gone up by $386 per person. And that is from an increase, I think, 110 of registration fees and the rest in transportation. So is it just that they didn't get the paperwork in on time, or? Because that's another $4,000 if they would have had it in last time.
Right. I don't have a specific answer to whether that was because they didn't get the paperwork in on time. I would assume that there have been some changes to those costs. Yes.
So when we discuss timeline, I think that's appropriate, because when we look at air travel, I know from my professional experience, they make it very clear that you need to book your flights ahead of time because airline tickets do go up quite quickly. I also wanted to pull this item to discuss, and full transparency, that the board be held accountable to the same expectations. I do have 2 items on there. Number 4, in myself, Deputy Superintendent Dr. Reynolds, as well as a principal, Ms. Aries, attending the ALAS Equity Education Conference. The word equity is missing out there. What we completed was the form, setting the expectation to drive outcomes on student success. But taking a look at further, I expect to bring back to the board to address, I know our community members had talked about the academic equity education gap. So looking at recommendations for how do we close that academic gap in regards to equity. It is a great platform to attract and retain diverse employees that look like our students, and then also reviewing policy recommendations that are best practices across the nation at this equity conference. So that's what I hope to bring back and share with the governing board. Aligned to number 5, the board is also aligned a budget that we must follow and adhere to, and a timeline of which we must submit. So number 5, aligned to my focus for 2019-20 is around equity. Dr. Davidson and I and a teacher are going to the Diversity and Inclusion Conference, which will focus on policies, employee handbook, attract and retaining, all aligned to creating safety and well-being, driving inclusion and equity across our district, cultivating differences. So being held to the same standard, board, I look forward to sharing that information. Any other comments by the board?
I just want to say that I will go ahead and pass the 10 that are going from Peoria High School. It is a Title I school, and I think that since I did vote for Centennial, I will vote for a Title I school to go.
Thank you. Any other comments, Ms. Stone, Mr. Sandoval? Nope. Okay. Going forward, who would like to make the motion? It should be 9.1. Yes. I figure since my name's in
motion to approve the travel 9.1.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Ms. Pengarelli and a second by Mr. Sandoval. Are you waiting on me? Yes, you are. I forgot to change the screen. Sorry. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to 9.2, removed from the consent agenda item, Educational Services, Inc., Employee Staffing Agreement with Peoria Unified District, also known as ESI. Thank you. Mr. Sandoval.
Yeah, thank you. I pulled this, I just have a question and a comment. And again, this ESI and bringing back, high caliber and experienced teachers into the classroom is invaluable to our students without question. But my question is this, what motivated us to expand on their compensation model? And I think that's the main topic of this particular line item.
President Sejal Martinez, Mr. Sandoval, members of the board, community. What we did in here, Mr. Sandoval, this was an agreement or a contract that was established in July of this past year of 2019. In review of the language that it's actually on page 3 where it's under scope of services and what ESI will do on our behalf, right? It said in there compensate. What we wanted to do is to really clarify just on behalf of what we do and what they do to support us what compensation really was. So that's why we put in that language about supplemental stipends, reimbursements, performance pay, because we just wanted to make certain that we were very transparent in what we were doing on behalf of those employees that returned to work.
Gotcha. And the performance pay and the dollars that are being used to fund those particular items coming out of 301 monies, M&O?
I'll let Ms. Meyer speak to that, but I could share with you, depending upon what area they're eligible for, right? But I'm certain she can add more value to that.
Thank you, President Sejal Martinez. Our performance pay is funded from Prop 301 as well as M&O. Prop 301 has certain requirements related to which staff members are eligible for the funding source, so we're cognizant of that.
Okay. So here's my statement, and thank you for that. And again, invaluable to have this resource back into the classroom. But one of the things that I've talked about in the past and that I want to continue to have discussion on is, Ms. Sejal Martinez talked about equity, and I'm going to use this term equity as it relates to our employee groups, more specifically our classified staff. So I guess my point is this. As we took a look at expanding on the compensation model for, I guess an organization that is considered an independent contractor, I want to make sure that we also make the consideration to individuals who are employees of this district, meaning our classified staff. I mean, we talk about it taking a village, to educate our kids, and our classified staff are absolutely part of that village without question. So I just want to make sure that they are top of mind, and that as we take a look at performance pay or expanding on compensation models, I want to have the same consideration for those individuals as well. Okay. So again, 100% agree with this, but I aligned it with just equity, and I just want to keep that top of mind. Okay. Thank you. So with that said, I do move that we approve the...
Hold on a second.
All right, go ahead.
Any more questions, comments? No? Okay, now you're ready.
I do move that we approve the now, which is 9.2, is that correct?
Yes.
The Educational Services, Inc. Employee Staffing Agreement with Peoria Unified School District.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Sandoval, second by Ms. Underhill. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to 10.1, discussion on acquisition of data analytics system. Mr. Gay.
Barry, would you bring that up? This mouse is, thank you. Well, good evening, Ms. Sejal Martinez, members of the board, Superintendent Pallas Thompson, and staff and guests. It's my pleasure tonight to talk about something we've actually talked about a little bit in the past. Over the recent months, You've heard myself, Ms. Myers, superintendent, and others just mention in passing in board meetings, retreats, other venues and forums, our intention to acquire a data analytics system. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about exactly what that is or what that would entail. And so tonight, it's my purpose to inform the governing board officially regarding the administration's intent to acquire and implement or begin implementation of a commercial data analytics software system this semester. And so to that end, what I'd like to talk about tonight is certainly the alignment of such an initiative with our strategic plan. We want to talk about what are the challenges, the needs, the problems that such a system will address for us. And I think it might be a good idea to spend just a little bit of time briefly talking about what a data analytics system is, because not everyone knows right off the bat what that is. We'll talk a little bit about expected benefits of acquiring that system and implementing it. And then finally, our acquisition strategy, the timeline, and cost estimates. Now, this clearly is not the point at which we bring the decision to you to let us acquire such a system. It's just to give you some information about our approach that we're taking, what that would entail. I wanted, before I went any further, to introduce Ms. Jill Thomas, who is sitting in the back. Jill is our Director of Information Systems, and I would just mention probably the person who's, along with Ms. Myers, most closely responsible for getting all the money into the district that we get, with her team of people with student information system and state reporting and all those sorts of things. Extraordinarily important work that she does, and she will be heavily involved in leading the project as we go forward. So let me proceed on that note. Now, data analytics as a function is one of the 8 functional components of our emerging data leadership, governance, and security program you've heard me speak about before. That program, we call it DLGS, is strategically most closely aligned with stewardship. But I think you'll agree as we talk the rest of the presentation this evening that data analytics clearly and directly supports every perspective of our strategic plan. Now, what are those needs and challenges that we are addressing? It's been said that information or knowledge is the currency of the 21st century. And I think that's true when we just walk around the district, we sit in meetings, observe teachers making decisions about students and differentiation and all the things that they have to do up through the highest levels of the organization and even the governing board. Data is the lingua franca of that conversation. And so it is with us. I was thinking tonight about having some statistics about the amount of data, but I started looking at it and realizing that these numbers are so ridiculously huge that you can't even comprehend the volume of data that we're dealing with these days. So I decided not to do that. I will say that the need for data to help us make decisions, to inform the work that we do, and to basically drive the performance of the entire school district is never been greater than it is today, and it's growing all the time. And those things, of course, deal with classroom teachers making decisions every single day about students, whether that's a personalization decision, differentiation in the classroom, an MTSS intervention decision. And those decisions can't be made just based on yesterday's quiz. They have to be made on a much richer set of data that fully informs the teacher about each and every student. Principals and school leadership teams are every single day making decisions and planning for whether they're setting goals for the school, planning some improvement targets, working on ESSA, whatever it is they're planning to do. All of that has to be informed with data. And certainly at the administrative district level, we're working constantly on improvement strategies, our strategic plan itself, and it certainly depends on data and enhancing everyday operational efficiency as well. Now, we do have, like all large enterprises, a tremendous amount of data. Much of it, almost all of it, is what we talk of as being locked up in transactional systems. Not literally locked up, but basically transactional systems are those ones we use to run the district on a day-to-day basis. So these are the things the systems that allow us to order supplies or take attendance or check out a book from the library, or for a student to enter a test score or answer a question on a test. So those are all transactional systems, incredibly important. We absolutely have to have them to run the school district every single day. But those systems, and this is an important distinction, are not designed to support decision making. They're not designed to do that. They're optimized to help you do transactions. That's what they do. And so there's a lot of literature out there that talks about this, because there's been a lot of executives that will say, well, just give me all that data in a big database and everything will be great. And I can guarantee you that it never is great when you take that approach to it. So the answer is data analytics, and these are robust, state-of-the-art systems that effectively support the growing need, and I call it educational intelligence. I'm not the only person, that's not my term, but it's derived from the term business intelligence. I'm sure some of you have come across that term before, the term that was coined back in the 90s to talk about all the things the ways that you use information to improve the organization. And so we adapt that for education. We call that educational intelligence. So I did want to talk a little bit about what these analytic systems are, so that we're all on the same page when we talk about going forward with this acquisition. So I picked a couple of different definitions that kind of go out in a little bit different direction. One is kind of a formal definition. It says it's the discovery, analytics is the discovery, interpretation, and communication of meaningful patterns in data and the process of applying those patterns toward effective decision making. Pretty accurate, kind of formal. This other definition I really like. It says analysis is about understanding what happened. Analytics is about determining why it happened and what's going to happen next. And that's an important distinction. Now, it's not 100%. I mean, there's a lot of overlap between analysis and analytics, but that kind of helps make the distinction. There's lots of other terms people use out there to describe these things. Decision support systems, business intelligence systems, performance management systems. There's a lot of different terms, but basically they're all names for the same thing, which are systems to drive improvements in performance. There are functions that are typical of most of these systems out there. I will say most of them, because as a class of software, these systems are really vary widely in terms of their capabilities. But these are some pretty common features and functions that they have. Some advanced reporting, so basically a lot more than you get out of that finance system or student information system, but much more advanced, I went too fast, much more advanced reporting that allows us to see relationships between disparate data sets, for example. Some advanced ability to visualize data, which is extraordinarily important. Analytics tends to deal with large volumes of data, and it's virtually impossible to understand it when somebody just presents that as a big chart, or a big table, rather. And so these systems have advanced visualization of data so that it's easier to interpret. Analysis, certainly, some of them include very sophisticated statistical capabilities. Another feature is very common, very important, and is very useful these days in education. It's the idea of alerts. So what that is a function that basically alerts management, alerts the user to some condition that has happened. So in public education, there's many, many places where this is applied, but a couple that come to mind is, for example, alerting a principal or a teacher that a student has crossed the line into being at risk based on some sort of criteria that the district or the school sets. So the student wasn't at risk, now they're at risk for whatever reason, and an alert is sent to the administration or the teacher to let them know that. There's another set of alerts that are pretty common these days are alerts that have to do with chronic absenteeism. So we're trying to get a handle on people who are absent more than they should be absent from school. And then we can set thresholds so that when a student, as the year goes on, starts getting close to that point where they're getting in danger of being absent too much in terms of the standards that the state set, it can send us an alert. So patterns and trends discovery. And then one of the most powerful features that the most sophisticated systems have is a concept called predictive analytics. And that goes back to that definition that says, what will happen next? So the more sophisticated systems that are available to us these days can actually do a pretty good job of using historical data to predict future performance. Not in the stock market, but in terms of our students and how they may perform. One last distinction I want to make here is pretty important, and it affects the strategy that we're employing to go forward. Some of these products are basically, pardon me, built as a tool set. So they're a set of tools, and like tools in your toolbox, they're useless and empty by themselves. Something has to be added to them in order to be effective. So in the case of analytics, some of the big technology companies, in particular Microsoft, Oracle, have tool sets that have analytic capabilities in them, but there's no data models, no algorithms, no procedures, anything that is specific to the organization that plans to use them. So if a company wants to buy one of these, then what they have to do is hire data scientists, data engineers to create data models and populate those data models with information that's unique to that organization. Very expensive, and it takes an extraordinary amount of talent to do that. On the other hand, there are analytics solutions, and those are analytics products in which the company is specializing in certain industries or professions and has added years and years and years of knowledge about how that profession works into the tool. So you get an entire solution that way. And happily, it turns out that there are a number of K-12 specific analytic solutions out there. And these are solutions, as I said, which have incorporated years or even decades, in some cases, of experience with K-12 in terms of how does public education work. And so that information is embedded in the tool. Very quickly, not going to spend much time on this at all, but I wanted to make a distinction again between these and the normal transaction system. An analytics system is, like most software systems, software and data. One big difference, the sources of data. As the title of the slide indicates, data analytics is fundamentally a multi-source data integration solution. That means we take all those transactional systems that we use every day, student information, finance, libraries, transportation, budget, financial, facilities, boundaries, all those things, as well as data sets, assessment data, and other things like that. And all of those become inputs to the analytics system. Now, they're not just stored in there as is. They are, the raw data is preserved, but on top of that, the analytics system knows how to look at all that source data, combine it, and integrate it in very intelligent ways so that it's prepared for the software to find those patterns and make those predictions and all that. So there's a lot of translation and integration that takes place on the data, with the result that it produces those functions that I talked about earlier, the advanced reporting and dashboards, pattern discovery, all that type of thing. I would point out also, it just says analytics software. The fact is that's very, very sophisticated software. You'll hear some techniques and technologies that are employed in modern analytics solutions like artificial intelligence and machine learning. And again, happily enough, a number of the K-12 specific solutions do incorporate those technologies. Our planned benefits, try to go through these quickly, but certainly accurate and timely information in the hands of all users. This is not a system that's just for administrators or just for the board or even just for teachers. It's for all users in the district. It will become the primary source of data for classroom through administration and the governing board. Will decrease the amount of time required to gather and analyze data. That's huge. I read a thing about one executive that did not like the idea of an analytics system, didn't want to make the investment in it, and said, I can go out and hire 20 MBAs right out of school and stick them in front of a bunch of spreadsheets, they can do the same thing. Well, when the person sat down and started calculating the cost of 20 MBAs and how long it would take them to produce those results, he quickly changed his mind. Gives us a whole child perspective for our teachers, coaches, counselors, and school administrators. Lots of support for our multi-tiered system of supports. Also support for multi-year goal setting and tracking by principals. Predictive capabilities for student success. This is enormously important. So we can take a look at our formative assessments, our benchmark assessments, other behaviors in the classroom, our attendance patterns, and so forth, and begin to make reasonable predictions about how well students are going to be successful in our district. And then finally, improve program evaluation, budget management, and facilities utilization. There are many other features and benefits that we believe that will accrue, but that is just a few of them. Our acquisition approach and timeline is the following. We assembled a team of certified classified administrative staff over the past couple of months, and we developed a very comprehensive set of requirements, which we've scrutinized, gone over, and finalized. That's ready. We've gone out and looked at what are the products that are available for us to purchase from existing contracts. And it turns out that there are a number of products that are available that generally match our requirements. We've identified those, and what we're doing right now is working with purchasing to scrutinize those contracts to make sure that all the terms and conditions, scope of work, all those things are appropriate for this purchase that we intend to make. And so right now, our belief, the indication is that there are a sufficient number of products available to us with existing contracts that we can conduct a reasonably competitive evaluation of those products and end up with a system that will certainly meet our needs. The timeline that we're working on is to finish that contract diligence that I mentioned and issue a solicitation for bid in early October to mid-October. We're putting our team together to evaluate those bids and to compare those with our requirements, to invite those vendors in for product demonstrations sometime around the end of October, maybe early November. And then finally, a recommendation to the governing board to approve a purchase order that would be probably in the second meeting in November. There's a phased implementation that would begin after that, what I call phase 0, which is really all about the implementation, the basic work to get a system like this up and running. Now, this is not like installing a transactional system. One of the big pieces of work associated with these is cleaning up data. The data has to be right, has to be valid. We certainly don't want to be making decisions based on inaccurate data. And so I've talked to a number of school districts who've done these things and other businesses as well, and they will tell you uniformly that's where they spend most of their time, cleaning up their data and getting it ready. That's probably 6 months worth of work by itself. But then we'll launch into phase 1, which is really an implementation of a small subset of the content areas in which we're interested. So for example, we would focus on student achievement data, and we would focus on budget and finance data, perhaps facility utilization data as well. We could wait on that and wait until we have our facility utilization study complete and then move that data in later. So part of the initial work with the vendor is that we'll plan out a phased implementation schedule. For a district of our size, it typically takes about 3 years to fully implement an analytics system, and so we anticipate something along those lines. Anticipated cost, the cost of these vary pretty widely based on really 3 primary factors, if you will. One is the product vendor's licensing, implementation services, and support cost models, so how they structure their costs for those 3 things. The second, this is probably one of the biggest factors, is the software license type. Is it a perpetual license or an annual subscription? Perpetual license is a bigger upfront cost, and then there are annual support fees later. The subscription is pretty much level all the way across, but it's higher each on an annual basis. Also, the big factor is the scope of implementation and the timing of that. How long is it going to take us to ramp up to full implementation, and what are we paying in the meantime? So that phasing and breadth of the data footprint. So I attempted to put together some pretty reasonable estimates. I estimated on the high side because I'd much rather do that and have it come in lower, but we don't know for sure until we see these products. And what we're saying is that for a perpetual license, and by the way, I'll mention that these costs will vary based on the hosting model as well, because a lot of companies these days offer you the choice of hosting the product yourself on your own servers or of hosting it in the cloud. And so hosting it in the cloud usually costs more because you're paying them to do that work for you. So a perpetual license first year cost is $350,000 to $450,000 with an annual cost of $70,000 to $90,000 for a 5-year total cost of between $630,000 and $810,000. An annual subscription license, much less upfront, so it's an annual license fee of about $185,000 to about $280,000. And by the way, these costs are usually, almost always, dependent on the number of students in the district. And then that would be a 5-year total of $925K to $1.4 million. And then finally, this is a much smaller amount, but it's important to point it out. that we would want to make sure that we have recurring training every year for new employees, refresher training. This would go up or down depending on how much of the training we can do ourselves, but just a rough estimate, annual cost after the first year of $40,000 to $100,000. And so you can see what those 5-year costs are. Again, they vary widely. For example, if we decided on a perpetual license, but we wanted the vendor to host the product for us, we might have to add something to those prices that I'm showing you there. On the other hand, if on the annual subscription license, most of the time that is hosted by the vendor, so that wouldn't change too much, probably wouldn't have that choice. So anyway, those are the projected anticipated costs, and at that, I am ready to stand for questions.
Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and start. I'll offer any governing board would like to start us off. Ms. Underhill.
Okay, well, great. That was a great description because that word has been thrown around, and I appreciate the visuals because that was helpful to understand what that is. I guess I have kind of two main questions. So you've talked about other districts have implemented this, and so as a result of their investment and implementation of these data analytics systems, what trends have they been able to identify, and more importantly, what outcomes have they been able to reach due to that, either in student achievement or compensation or whatever?
Well, thank you, Ms. Underhill. It's a great question. The results that districts have achieved vary quite widely. I spoke with one district who didn't do a very good job at all, and they haven't received much in the way of great benefits. And so I asked why. Well, and the answer was kind of sheepishly, we didn't plan this very effectively. And so what they did was they bought a piece of software before they knew what they were going to do with it. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I just recently spoke with a district up north in this state that has focused their efforts with their analytics acquisition in the research area. And they have used it. In fact, I talked to the research director. They're very happy with what happened. And one of the results that he pointed out to me was that every board meeting now, the presentations that they're doing are all given live with this system. And so that when they're giving a system that's, let's say, showing an achievement trend or something like that, they don't just talk about it, they bring the data up live and they can show the trends and show how they're moving. He didn't go into what trends exactly are they finding, but that he was emphatic that the board was very pleased with the fact that they can show the data live. And one of the things that they also get feedback on is that that's just enormously important for transparency. People believe that they're really seeing the real thing and not a slide that somebody concocted, to tell a story. And so those are primarily what we're seeing. Now, in talking to people at conferences, a little hard sometimes to get real detailed information when you just sit down with somebody at a conference. Lots of great impact in the area of support for interventions for multi-tiered system of supports. So the ability to determine and predict what interventions are going to be effective for a given student, that's one. The other I had heard from one district was great help in addressing chronic absenteeism, able to determine those trends. That's a quick idea.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And so I guess my other question on that is kind of like the basic. So what questions are we looking to answer? Because to me, it seems like if we don't know that, it's going to be really hard for us to find a match for a system. So I guess maybe we don't know yet, but that would be one of my sort of number one question.
Well, thank you. That is also a very good question, Ms. Unreal. I can tell you that some years ago, when these systems started being first built, you actually had to do that ahead of time. You had to say, what are the 10 questions I want to ask? And they built a system to answer those 10 questions. Well, thankfully now, systems are way more flexible than that. And you don't have to have your questions identified, strictly speaking, ahead of time. But as you plan your implementation and the sequence in which you roll the system out and populate it with data, then it's very important to understand where your priorities are for addressing questions and answering questions. And so that's what I was mentioning earlier. If, for example, we're very focused on, and by the way, these questions that we're thinking about, or these subject areas that we're thinking about, this won't be a surprise to you, are very closely aligned with our strategic plan. And so as we think of, for example, one area that Ms. Myers and I have talked about quite frequently is the ability to do program evaluation and program align our budget development. And so one of the early things we want to be able to do is build the data sets up so that we can do work like that. Another one has to do with student success, not a big surprise there. So as we continue the work to define what is meant by student success in the Peoria Unified School District, and we look at, as a piece of that, what does college and career readiness look like in the Peoria Unified School District, we will build the achievement systems and all the things associated with the life skills and college readiness and all those things that go into that definition. We'll build that data into the system so that it can begin telling us and giving us answers, maybe making predictions about how our students are doing there. So we'll also look at, as I mentioned, facilities utilization, because obviously as we contemplate the possibility of a bond coming up, we want to be very clear and very certain ourselves that we're utilizing our facilities in the best way we can. So it really has to do not with what can the system do, but it's much more about our priorities for understanding our own operations, and then we build priorities around those.
Great. And then another question I have is just, so you've mentioned some things like, the system being able to identify early warning signs and interventions and that kind of thing. And I know that some of our systems, like iReady, is able to do some of that already. And so I just want to make sure that, is there a way to ensure that, we're tapping what we've already got and that those things are able to talk to each other, so we're not just buying something on top of something else?
Right. You're asking great questions tonight, and we've talked about a number of those things. And for example, somebody will say, well, gee, we have SchoolNet, and it has a dashboard, and are we going to just replace that? Well, the answer is no. The systems we look at, and that's one of the reasons I showed that picture about the integration, the multi-source integration, is that that's exactly what we look to do. So there's no reason to duplicate what iReady does in terms of making predictions or making alerts about a student's progress or likelihood to be able to proceed. However, iReady or Alex or any of those instructional applications, they're very narrowly focused on the subject area and even grade level of what's going on there. So we want to be able to take that data into the larger system and make that part of the whole child.
Great. Okay, and then the last one, and I think you've already answered it, but you talk about our transactional systems. So what happens if our transactional systems change? So suddenly there's some federal mandate that we have to do things differently, et cetera, et cetera. Do these companies that develop these analytic systems plan for that? Or I'm just thinking, like, from the electronic medical record standpoint, those things happen and it can cause a lot of challenge. So,
well, Ms. Underhill, we should have had you on our requirements team. You would have had great questions. Seriously, and I'm not being flip. That is actually something that we do talk about, and we have talked about. And if you were to read our requirements document, you would see we make that case in a variety of different ways. For example, we say that the vendor system cannot require that we use any particular transactional system. Any system we have, they have to be able to import the data into their system. And the good ones know how to do that. Yeah, and that's the business they're in. And so to your point about changing, either if the system we have changes for some reason, let's say state reporting changes dramatically and for synergy or something like that, the vendors have to be able to react to those changes. And that's what they do for a living. They know how to do that. Now, a differentiation between vendors could be, well, vendor A may do that as the price of annual support. Right. Vendor B may charge us for something like that. So that would be part of our evaluation.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thank you for starting us off, Ms. Underhill. No, that was good. Ms. Pingarelli.
Well, I think you took one of my questions, so. No, I just want to make sure that we proceed cautiously, that it does do what we expect it to do, and for that kind of cost that we're getting enough out of it. So
absolutely, that is obviously that's our intent, but we are putting a lot of effort into ensuring that our requirements are well specified up front. I should point out, and when districts buy off of existing contracts, there is sometimes a tendency to just say, oh, I like that one, and buy that. And whereas when you do a full-blown RFP, it's important that you write detailed sets of requirements. And so what my team and I decided early on is, even though we believe we can buy off an existing contract, we're going to act like this is an RFP. We're going to develop a detailed set of requirements so that we do know exactly what you said. We know that we're going to get what we're asking for. We spent an amazing amount of time deciding, well, is this requirement mandatory or is this a preferred requirement? Really going through at that level of detail. So I think you'll be pleased with the amount of diligence we're putting into it.
Okay. And who's on your team?
Well, the leader of the team is Ms. Thomas. We've ended the work of our first team, which is, as I mentioned earlier, is made up of certified, classified, and administrative staff. We had, I don't know, Jill, what was it, about 18 people, something like that. And we actually spent some time educating them because not all of them knew exactly what an analytic system was either. So our purpose was to educate them, make sure they know what these things do, which we did, and then give them an opportunity to reflect on, well, gee, how would I use a system like that in my classroom or in my school or in my department? And so I could provide you the list of names if you'd like, but that's basically the approach of the team.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I should add again, I don't want to leave anything out. We're going to create another team, a new team. Some of those people in the first one will probably be on it. We'll add some additional people, and this team will be the team we put together to actually evaluate the demonstrations from the vendor and looking at contracts to make sure they do what we ask them to do.
Thank you. Mr. Sandoval.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Gay. From a hosting regard and determining which way we go, right? Do we currently have, I guess, the technology to host such a system? Is that the variable that we're considering on whether or not we host it or allow, a third party to host this system?
Well,
one of the variables, I guess.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Sandoval. That's a great question. We do have the capacity. We have actually pretty amazing capacity to host a system like this, but we always have to ask ourselves, how much labor will it take us to take care of it? And so we have to think about what the cost of that labor is, and then we have to say, would it be better for us to let somebody else do that work? We tend, well, I shouldn't even say we tend. We have moved some of our big systems, for lack of a better term, into the cloud. And so, for example, SchoolNet, that's a system that's hosted in the cloud. A number of our instructional applications are, in fact, almost all of them are hosted in the cloud. Our Synergy student information system and our Visions, finance, payroll, business services, all that, those are all hosted locally. We did that for the ability to very closely control what happens with that system. One of the things you always have to keep in mind, and you can deal with this with contractual agreements, but you always, when you have the vendor host it for you, then that means they've got their hands on your system. Now, we have third-party data sharing agreements. We have all kinds of ways to deal with that, but that's just something else to think about. So it's always a risk-benefit trade-off. There's no single answer as to which way to go. I can tell you that if vendor A said, hey, if you let us host this for you, we'll give you this great price, and then if we look into vendor A and we realize that their hosting model is not so good, they're not hosted on Amazon or Google or some Microsoft or something like that, but they've got, some small company that's hosting for them, probably saying, I don't think so. And so we have to evaluate all those different factors when we think of that, and of course, price.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So next question is, if I heard you correctly, so this system sounds very smart, without question. And Ms. Underhill, actually, her question led to, I believe, our ability to not have to have all the questions set up front, but once the data is in, it allows us as a district to, I guess, have certain queries or questions, throughout the process, and it'll kind of spit out some type of response. Is it that smart?
It is. Now, but let me be a little more specific so the expectations are clear. What happens with these modern systems, the good ones, is that, as you put it, we put in all of our data. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the system then creates additional data, which is the result of integrating and looking for example, matching data sets in the HR system with data sets in the student information system, let's say matched on teacher, right? And so they build additional tables based on all of that and discover additional relationships as they do that. Now, many of the relationships are built with their years and years and years of working in the K-12 industry, and they know how those things fit together. Then what they also do is they build a lot of predefined queries and reports and visualizations and things that you can exercise right out of the box. And so you can very quickly look at attendance patterns over the last 5 years and that comes right out of the box. Also out of the box is the ability to drill down on all that. So you might bring up a bunch of interesting attendance patterns and one looks kind of alarming. You click on that, you drill down all the way down to an individual student or an individual staff member if it has to do with staff attendance. And so those things tend to come right out of the box. What these systems also provide is a set of advanced tools that allow you to build your own. And so you can create reports that maybe they haven't done that are unique to Peoria Unified School District in this case. The other piece that comes out of the box with the ability to tailor to individual needs are the dashboards. And so the good ones come with what they call them different things, but dashboard widgets. And basically, you can get your screen in front of you and say, well, I'd like to see every day what attendance in my school looks like today. I'd like to see what my substitute teacher number looks like today. I'd like to see how my students are trending in a certain academic area. And so they can identify 4 or 5, however many they want, different pieces of information. And then every day or all the time, when that system is open, those pieces of data are being updated real time. And so they can move them around, they can change them, they can put different ones in there. So that's all out of the box. Now, we always have the opportunity, for example, to load a data set in there that they've never used before in their product. And once again, in that case, we have to decide, well, does the vendor charge us to do that, or will they do that for free? If in either case, then how will we go about creating reports and queries and dashboard widgets and all those things to reflect that additional data that's being put in there? So it's a combination of out-of-the-box, a lot of out-of-the-box capability, as well as tools for us to add things that we want to add.
That's great, thank you. And the last question. So when you take a look at numbers and data, and there's a skill set that humanizes that data and translates it in a way that a finance staff or a teacher or a coach, whomever, can understand and really garner that knowledge and be better tomorrow than they were today, right? So can you talk about that a little bit, and how we're going to be able to translate that data in a way that is relevant and that's relevant, to the different verticals throughout the district?
Well, I think that's another great question. They're all great questions. Thank you for that, Mr. Sandoval. And I think once again, it's a combination of what the product can do right out of the box and what we can make it do as we become more comfortable with it. And so some of these things that I've looked at, the companies have spent, and they tend to, by the way, they tend to have educators in their companies. So these are not just, software developers, for example. And they have spent a lot of time thinking about, well, what would be most meaningful for a classroom teacher in terms of this piece of this set of data? Now, that might look very different than the same data presented to a principal or to, the head of curriculum and instruction, for example. And so they spent a lot of time thinking of different ways to present that data so that it's meaningful to the people that are going to look at it. So that's number one. Number two, and this is work for us to do. Part of this whole effort is the development of a data culture. We talk about data. Most districts talk about data. Every business talks about data. But at the end of the day, you have to develop a culture for using data. And that's work that we're going to have to do. It's interesting. We've talked a lot about this. You can say, well, let's develop that data culture, then we'll buy an analytics system. And it's really hard, you find out, to develop the data culture with no tool sets to support that work. On the other hand, you can say, let's just go buy an analytics system and worry about all that, how to use the data later. Well, that doesn't work so well either, because you probably end up buying something that doesn't suit your needs. So we're trying to hit a home run by looking at both of those things at the same time.
Ms. Stone.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. This is very enlightening and exciting, and yeah, it's very interesting, and I'm excited to see it come to fruition. And I only have one question, really. How are we going to involve the parents in all this new information, and how are we going to hopefully get them more involved in their child's education and get information to them about what is needed?
That's also a great question, Mrs. Doan. I thank you for that. This is an area of sharing data with parents. We all want to do that more, but in an effective way, so that they're not confused, they're not feeling like they're being, overwhelmed for some reason or whatever it might be. We have good capabilities to share data today. We don't think it's enough. The challenge is we don't want our parents to have to go to 5 different places to find data. We also don't want to hand them this super sophisticated piece of software that they have to be trained on how to use. So what I can tell you, and it's not a complete answer to your question, but what I can tell you is that designing an interface for parents that makes more of this data available to them is most definitely on our radar. Now, I say it that way because one way we could do that, by the way, is that we have a parent portal right now that provides information about students, their assignments, their attendance, and all that sort of thing. We can add links on that portal to other things. And so, for example, we could add link to the analytics system that brings up, let's say, a dashboard that shows some additional information to parents. We could provide a link to something that shows more information about what's going on with our facilities or something like that. But that's going to take an awful lot of thinking and understanding. And so obviously one of the things we have to do there is engage some parents in that conversation. And so we intend to do that. So I don't have an answer for exactly what that's going to look like, but I can tell you it's on the roadmap, and we will definitely engage our parents in figuring that one out.
And can the tool also be used to analyze somehow to get more parents involved? See what the reaction of parents has been to certain outcomes, how that works, and get more of our parents to be active?
Well, I would say the answer to that is yes. When you read about a lot of these systems in the professional literature, a lot of it is based on commercial use. But when you think of a commercial entity as having customers who are grown-ups, right? Well, they do that same thing. They figure out how is it we can attract more people in this certain demographic. We don't have enough millennials that are buying our product, and they're off buying somebody else's product. Why is that? And we can put a strategy in place to address that. These analytic systems will help, assuming we can put enough data in, can help us understand the why. So one of the things they really do is root cause analysis. They support that. So why is this happening? Then we develop a strategy to change it, and then we can develop some dashboards or whatever we think is appropriate to track, are we making progress in a way that we anticipated we would. And so it does have those capabilities. I don't want to pretend for a minute that out of the box you just push a button and it tells you the answer to that. There's a lot of work that we have to do, but certainly products like this can support answering questions like that.
That's great, because that's something, that I think schools across the country struggle with so much. And if we can get some help in that area, I'd be really excited about it. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Gay. Well, first of all, I know you are so passionate about this topic, and we can spend hours talking about it.
We could.
I appreciate all the time and dialogue, especially from the governing board. There are a few things I just want to ask as we continue this process, since tonight is to bring information to the board. We are, and we continue to make directional progress with the information that we have. But part of the challenge we face as a board is that when we ask you and your team, it takes a lot of time and human capital to get all that data and identify the questions so that we can have the data to make informed decisions. when we have situations like that, creating measurable outcomes becomes a challenge, and we don't have that quantitative number to say we've moved the bar from here to there. With that in mind, what I would like to ask as you move forward and consider with your team, we do a great job of incorporating internal stakeholders and including parents, but we also have community members who have no children or are not staff members, and I would like to see them part of that team to determine what data they want to see to determine, are we stewardships of our resources, stewards of our resources. So that is one ask, is to continue to involve our community in that conversation to make that informed decision. Second, this is a very large investment, and it's not uncommon for any organization, especially the size that we have as a budget, to make this type of investment. So kudos to you for doing your due diligence and seeing what has worked, best practices, and where the path we do not want to go. I would like to see going forward, when you come back to us with a proposal, is what our cost analysis on our current practices are versus what the recommendation is, the upfront costs, and what we expect to see the value added and any potential decrease in costs over a period of time. Recognizing these are predictions and things change. Staffing, if we don't have the right staff, you're going to need staff.
Right.
So those things I recognize as factors that may change the story, but I would like to see a baseline cost analysis, and as we move forward, that recommendation ultimately, so that we can communicate to our community and all our stakeholders that we create a dashboard and say, look, we had X amount of dollars. By implementing this and defining the problem, we made these changes, and here was the outcome, and this is what it meant to the student outcome. So I would like to see a dashboard drafted so that we can have a very clear picture of what we're doing with the funds that we've been gifted with. Last is, we've heard a lot about improving working conditions. Part of that goes down to the front line. The teachers spend a lot of time, hours, gathering data, doing analysis, using the iReady. How are we going to quantify the hours reduced in improving their working conditions on the front line, all the way down to our district office and the hours that Ms. Myers and her team and any other team does, that we're doing that we're improving the condition of working in the Peoria Unified School District. I know you're big on risk, so I'm going to trust with the policies that you've recommended to the board. You've already considered the risk that you're putting the district in, and highlighting those things that here are the risks that we're facing, but we've prepared to handle those risks. But overall, I think our board has asked a plethora of questions, and mine is just to consider those three asks going forward.
We'll do that for sure. Thank you.
Ms. Pangarelli.
I did forget, I know this was a big topic with us in discussion in the past, is for student and teacher privacy data. I just want to know how that's addressed, because with all the data, how are we going to keep it secured?
Well, thank you, Ms. Pingarelli. It's a great question. We secure the data in an analytics system exactly the same way as we secure data in our transactional systems. It's data and content that sits in a data store. That data store is protected by our systems if it's locally hosted. It's protected by the vendor systems if it's hosted somewhere else. We exercise all the diligence we do in either one of those cases to ensure that only the people that have access, only the people that should have access to bits of data have access. So as a simple example, and all these systems do this, is that the way the system works in terms of individual users is it's role-based access controls. And so that means that if I'm a classroom teacher, when I bring up, if there's a report defined that has something to do with, let's say, performance on a benchmark, I only get to see the results from the students in my class or my grade level, depending on how we set that up. I don't get to see the results from the other school. If I'm a principal, I only get to see the results of the students that are in my school, et cetera. So it's all role-based security and access controls. Beyond that, it's the technology that we use to protect everything behind the firewall. If we if we host it locally. If we choose to host it with a third party, then we have our third-party data sharing agreement, and we exercise diligence over how they protect that data to the point where we're satisfied that they do that.
Okay, I know in the past, it was maybe about a couple of years ago, we had talked about this, and the company that we were going to deal with, I know they had stored different data than we anticipated. It was disability status and stuff, so I just want to make sure that the data is stored correctly. I just want to emphasize that. And then for something that's going to cost potentially over $1 million, you know, my main goal is student achievement. I think unless we can bring those numbers up, right now we have 30% of high school 11th graders that can't pass, or excuse me, we only have 30%, 70% don't pass the English AZ merit. So the money should be directed towards student achievement. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, Governing Board, any additional comments? Superintendent Pallas Thompson? Okay, all right. Thank you very much for all your time, Mr. Gay. Moving on to first read policy 10.2 DJE, Ms. Myers.
Good evening, President Seja Martinez, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Pallas Thompson, thank you. I am here this evening to provide an overview of Policy Advisory Number 652 related to Policy DJE, or Bidding Purchasing Procedures, which is primarily the result of actions taken by the 54th Legislature during the session that began in January and adjourned sine die on May 28th, 2019, with the resulting bills going into law effective August 27th, 2019. And as a result, the Auditor General's Office, as well as Arizona Department of Education, have updated the Uniform System of Financial Records, or known as the USFR, and that manual provides audit requirements, and those requirements and expenditure sections were updated to remove the requirement for districts to obtain 3 oral quotes. Now, instead of having oral quotes, the requirement is for written quotes from at least 3 vendors for purchases costing at least $10,000 and less than $100,000. So prior to this revision and change, purchases between $10,000 and $49,999 could be covered by oral quotes. So now the oral quotes are removed and it's all written quotes. And so as a result of that, tonight is again an overview, and we will be bringing back this advisory first meeting of October through consent for approval. And that concludes my update. Thank you.
Governing Board, any questions? Okay. Thank you. Moving on to first read of policy section IHA. Dr. Bell.
Thank you. Good evening, President Seja Martinez, Superintendent Pallas Thompson, and Governing Board members. The first of 3 instructional first read policies this evening include IHA, Basic Instructional Program. The addition to this particular policy by Arizona School Boards Association includes the identification of at least 1 kindergarten through 3rd grade teacher in each school who will have received training related to dyslexia that complies with the requirements prescribed in ARS 15219 and ARS 15501. This training enables teachers to understand and recognize dyslexia and to implement structured literacy instruction that is systematic, explicit, multisensory, and evidence-based to meet the educational needs of students with dyslexia. On a side note, we will have all K-3 teachers trained in any training related to dyslexia that meets those criteria, because Foundations training actually does that for all of our K-3 teachers.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bell, for bringing that to our attention. First, I do want to take this one. I'll start off this is an unfunded mandate that was approved. Is that accurate information?
That's correct.
Okay. The good thing is our district is ahead of the game because we've approved a system that is going to do that. But highlighting, we're making a policy change as a result of an unfunded mandate by our state. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Ms. Underhill, any questions?
I don't really have any questions, but I'm assuming that because this is now in statute and we're training, that there'll be additional parents that are recognizing the issue. And I guess this is maybe off topic because it's policy, but are we also prepared with additional resources for parents in the community? Because I know they're few and far between and very expensive, so.
Yes, we have some work to do on that in terms of materials and resources for reading, but the Foundations has been an excellent start for us, not only with the materials, but with the professional development.
Thank you. Ms. Pingarelli? Yep. Mr. Sandoval? Ms. Stone? Thank you very much. This is first read, and if the community has any questions or comments or emails, they can send it on over for the next board meeting. Thank you. Moving on to the next one. First read of policy section IHAMD.
IHAMD is a new policy for us recommended by the Arizona School Boards Association as a result of new Arizona legislation. Instruction and training in suicide prevention. School districts shall provide training in suicide awareness and prevention for staff, and it lists those. I want to make a clear clarification here because the legislation requires that we train the following in suicide prevention: guidance counselors, teachers, principals, and other school personnel who work with pupils in grades 6 through 12. This fall, we started to train all staff, both certified and classified, in suicide prevention because we believe that all staff actually touch kids. This is also based upon the work of our team, which you have met before, the social emotional learning team, and our attention to school safety for children in our community. So again, we have started the suicide training for all staff, and that staff will be required once every 3 years to take the research-based training again, and they would receive a certificate.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. Where does the funding come from for all this training?
The funding is not directly provided by ADE.
It is, or it's not?
It is not. It is, however, a part of our training and work with the SEL model that we're working with. That is partially funded by Title IV, which allows for those funds to be used for professional development and training related to school safety and security.
Thank you. Any questions, Governing Board? Additional questions?
Yeah, I just have a comment, Dr. Bell. I mean, so it states who work with pupils in grades 6 through 12. That, I guess, grade range, how is that determined?
Well, that was adopted actually by our legislature.
Okay.
We have noted, however, with our SEL team that Mr. Duguid leads, that there's concerns associated with student well-being below 6th grade. So we chose, based upon what we know about our kids in Peoria, to do an all-staff approach.
Perfect. That's where I was headed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, no other questions. Moving on. This is first read again. Moving on to 10.5, first read of policy section IKF.
Thank you. There's only a very brief addition to our graduation requirements. It includes the new state board requirement for economics that it be worth at least 0.5 of a course credit, and that course shall include financial literacy and personal financial management. Last year, the curriculum team in social studies began the work as it was a part of the interest of our governing board and the direction of our superintendent. So we started this effort last year. We're well ahead of the game, but we are starting not only to include those in the courses, but training teachers at the elementary level as well.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. For this one is something I'm passionate about, highlighting the fact that we as a district know what's right for kids, but though the state has supported this effort, it's unfunded. Again, so unfortunately, our community has prioritized financial literacy, and we're taking on that cost because it's what's right for kids. So I appreciate you bringing that forward.
Thank you.
Governing Board, any additional comments?
I do. Is this presented in the senior year, or is it started? I mean, I'm sure we start foundations earlier, but the test is in the senior year?
I'm sorry, do you mean the test for the financial literacy,
Yes.
the economics? We would have a course, end of course assessment for that particular class that would weave in some of that financial literacy component.
But that's in the senior year?
They could take it earlier than their senior year.
Okay.
But note that we are adding the financial literacy piece across the board, K-12, within social studies.
That's good. That answers my question. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, again, this is first read. I believe that's it for policy review. Thank you very much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Bell. Moving on to informational reports, 11.1, budget, facilities, planning, construction, budget report can be viewed online. Ms. Myers grabbing for the mic. Moving on. Okay, so no comments, but you can definitely review it online. 11.2, district enrollment reports for the month of August 2019. .3, report on upcoming meetings and events. This one, yes, we do want to highlight Ms. Airy.
President Ceja Martinez, members of the board, I think it's pretty self-explanatory this evening, but I did just want to note for our community, the last day to register to vote is October 7th.
Thank you very much. And I would like to highlight October 19th, the CTE Career and College Day. I've been there at least twice. I volunteered. If you want to volunteer, Dr. Beltram loves to have you there. You can see the kids and parents. If you want to just stop by, bring the little ones too. It's so important at the elementary level that they see this information and get excited because there's so many things to do in the CTE space. And then October 26th, another volunteering opportunity, Love Our Schools. Okay, moving on to 11.4, report and discussion on local state issues. Ms. Myers.
Good evening again, President Ceja Martinez, members of the board, President Superintendent Palace Thompson. During the policy agenda item earlier this evening, I mentioned the work of the 54th legislature. And during that session, the state of Arizona's fiscal year 2020 budget was also approved with an increase for school safety programming. So there was a school safety program expansion, which allocated funding for schools throughout the state to hire social workers, school counselors, school resource officers, and probation officers. The intent of the expansion is to promote safe and effective learning environments and to provide support for student impact. The program expansion allocated $20 million of grant funding statewide, with the Arizona Department of Education managing the grant application process that opened on September 16th and will close tomorrow, September 27th. Peoria Unified is joining over 200 public school districts in the state of Arizona to apply for the grant and to submit for an opportunity for social workers. And that request was facilitated in conjunction with our high schools and elementary school staff and administration. Ms. Kathleen Leonard, who serves as the district's Student Support Services Coordinator, and Dr. Marshall Walters, who is the MTSS PBIS Coordinator, and to ask what that means, Sean can certainly add to that title. I have written the district grant application in collaboration, as I mentioned earlier, with our sites, our high schools and elementary schools. The Arizona Department of Education has shared that they hope to spread this grant funding statewide, and that a large population of school districts and students will be supported by the award. And so due to this, the Peoria district is hopeful that we will receive funding for at least one social worker position funded as part of this grant opportunity. And that concludes my update. Thank you.
Appreciate that information and thank them for their hours, for that commitment and extra resource, and good luck to us. Moving on to 12.1, board member opportunity to readdress any additional items. Okay, moving on. 12.2, draft agenda for the October 10th meeting. Ms. Pangarelli will be leading as I will be out of the state, and I will attempt to conference in, or call in. And 12.3, future items. Governing board, are there any items you'd like to add to future? Ms. Underhill.
I don't have anything to add. I just, we have a few items on here, but we used to have a whole list, so are we gonna?
What happened to that giant list?
We're in the process.
Did we do it?
Are we just consolidating? Okay.
Working through
Okay.
it, yes.
It was all, okay.
We will, Ms. Pangarelli and I will work with our superintendent, and we'll get both lists and compare them and match them up, and then we'll provide a side-by-side for the board to look at what we need to readdress or how it incorporates that information.
Thank you.
Mr. Sandel, or Ms. Pangarelli?
Oh, yes, I just wanted to, with our earlier discussion, I just wanted to have a discussion on travel for staff administration and governing board. Kind of who should go, how many per site, and it could be a report. And then also, I know we had talked about this before, is the difference between the Met, CTE, and the Cactus High School.
I'll second both of those. The first one, the travel, like to discuss, we can get that at the board retreat too,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just an informational report, or board study session or meeting. Mr. Sandoval. Ms. Stone?
I do. I would like to take a look at our current, the block scheduling. I would like for us to take an in-depth look at that and decide if we want to continue with it or remove it or however we, I'd like to know what we want to do with that.
I would also like to add a timeline if we were to go to stepping away from the block schedule, so I'll
Right,
second that.
Right.
Okay. Any additional items? I do not have any. Okay. Number 13, adjourn. I need a motion.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
I'll second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay.
Okay.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned at 8:05. Thank you, everybody, for staying.